Hello everyone and welcome on The Papier de Rêve channel. I'm Ursula and today I will be painting with you some irises. I'm very sorry for the beginning of this video. My camera didn't pick the focus correctly, I don't know why, and everything is very blurry, but it will pass and everything will be fine in a few seconds. So today I'm painting irises and it's a flower that I like a lot too. To tell the truth, I'm liking all the flower, I think, but I like them because they are blue and they have a really complicated shape that I like. But it's quite difficult to paint them, and I was dreading a little bit to start this painting just because the flower has to be a bit more defined, so it needs a little bit more preparation, and I have to be very careful of what I'm doing. Because the heart of the flower are white, I wanted to start with the flower with the blue part so that I know where my flower are going on the paper and I can preserve this white part a little bit better. For the color of the flower, I'm using a mix of ultramarine blue and rose madder lake, and it's make a beautiful violet this way, a very vibrant violet, and I can change the color each time I go in my palette to make a little bit more blue or a little bit more pink, so that there is a lot of different tones in the violet and more interest in my painting. And once I'm happy with the shape of the flower, I can add the background with all the greeneries, and for that I'm using Amazonite Genuine and Nickel Azo-Yellow as I like to do so right now. It's my perfect mix of green now, and I add also a little bit of ultramarine blue in the mix if I want the green to be a little bit colder. And as you can see, the more I go in this layer, the more my paper is really wet. So all the colors are flowing in one another and everything is a little bit blurry, except all the part I'm keeping white for the heart of the flower. And I like this hard edges against soft edges. I think it makes a beautiful contrast here. And for the first layer, there is no need to have too much hard edges, because you can create them a little bit later in other layers. So it's quite nice to have things very blurry at first. And I will let this layer dry completely before starting detailing the flowers. So now my first layer has totally dry. The shapes are quite good, but very blurry, of course. And now I can focus my work on detailing the shape and making the flower a little bit more in volume and less flat. So I'm adding a darker color or more color in some area, and I'm creating shadows and light so that you can see the volume in these flowers. And I'm using the same mix of color, ultramarine blue and rose madder lake, and I also change the mix along the way. More ultramarine blue if I want a colder violet, and more rose madder lake if I want a more pinky violet. And here I use less water and more pigment than on my first layer, just because I want my color to be a little bit darker, and I do not need them to flow as much as on my first layer. I need them to be a little bit more contained, so I can work a little bit more in details. And for that I'm using just less water, more pigment. This second layer is all about the flower. I will not touch the background, the greenery, the foliage right now, just because I want the shape of the flower to be right, and I want to just think about that. And maybe it's a mistake, because I could use a little bit more merge in the color between greens and the violets. and everything is a little bit maybe too much potted, but that's okay. I can just add some violet later in the greens to make things a little bit more unified. Ultramarine blue and Rose Madder Lake are two very transparent colors, but I will also use a little bit of an opaque color, which is Wisteria from Daniel Smith. It's a watercolor, but opaque, and it helps me to put a little bit more volume in the flower, and also it's a perfect shade for the shadow on the flowers. I will let this layer dry totally before adding something more, and I will talk you through my supplies. For the brushes, I'm using an Escoda Último number 18 and a Rosemary Co serie 39 half an inch. For the colors, I'm using Ultramarine Blue, Amazonite Genuine, Nickel Azo Yellow, Rose Madder Lake, and Wisteria. And my paper is today from Arches in Rough. So for this third and last layer, I will focus my work on the background and the foliage, and adding a little bit more details to the flora. And for that, I'm changing my brush to a very particular brush with a very long hair that helps me to have really random marks. And even my cat doesn't seem it's enough and helps me with randomness here. But anyway, I'm using this brush to create the idea of foliage without adding too much details in this background. But this brush helps me to have random marks on my paper, and helps me also to cover large area in one go, because the hair are very long and can hold a lot of water. But I also can make really fine lines with it, just because the tip is so fine. For me, it's a perfect brush for foliage, just because of the randomness of it, but you have to let it go also in your mind, and you have to not to want to control it too much to have some really random and lovely marks with it. So for this part, I'm using the same mix of colors and at the beginning, so Amazon Genuine and Nickel Azo Yellow, sometimes a little bit Ultramarine Blue to make it even cooler, but that's it. And sometimes also I'm adding the violet mix into my green in order to merge the colors together, and also to have a little bit of a muted green in some area, so that it's a little bit more natural. And during the second layer, I was saying that my flower was a little bit not merge with the background, because I work them without working the background at the same time, so my colors are quite in a rigid space. They are not flowing into the background, but that's okay. Right now I can somehow correct this thing and make some violets merge into the greens. And also, if I want to correct a little bit the shape of a petal, I can really easily go over with the green on top of the violet, and it will look really great nonetheless. So now my painting is almost done. Everything looks quite nice, and I just want to add some tiny details a little bit more. I will add a little bit more fine lines in the earth of the flower, because they are there in real life, and I think it's a really important element to the flower. But I will also use a little bit more of the Wisteria color, which is an opaque color, to make some highlights in the flower, and make them a little bit more in volume with that colors. And if you want to use that light opaque color on top of dark color, you have to really use a very little amount of water and a lot of pigment, so that they still show at the end. And this video is now ending. Thanks for watching and I hope you like it. Please check the blog post for more information about this painting and tell me what you think in the comment. See you soon.